What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture, and today I got a video talking about when should you sell your key comics. Not one answer to this question. This video is brought to you by patron of the channel, Sean. Sean, thank you so much for asking this question. This is my patron suggestion video for February. I just thought it was a great question that, like I said, can be answered in so many different ways. Before I get into the video, though, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, guys, please take some time to do so. Also, check out all the awesome links below, including how you can become a patron of the channel via patreon.com for only $3.99 a month, the price of one comic book. Actually, it's now less than the price of a lot of new comic books. I'm not going to get into that right now. Exclusive Journos Comics merch. Link is below. Get yourself some gear and support the channel. And of course, we got the link to our comic book canon YouTube Friday night live shows every Friday with special guests almost every Friday as well. All right, let's get into this. When should you sell your key comics? Well, first, you really have to ask yourself, do you want to sell your key comics? We're going to assume, though, for asking this question, that you're in a position to where you want to sell. You know, like me, I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell anything. And although I care about return on investment and long-term investment and things like that, I really want my collection to be with me and then to my children and to pass down to their children and the family and so forth. But for the sake of the topic today, we're talking about those that actually want to sell your books. What's the right time? The question posed by Sean was this: when is a good time to sell your key comics? Movie announcements, trailer release, movie release, etc. All right, so we're going to break this down in two ways. We're going to look at books that are specifically related to movie spec. All right, but then we're going to talk about books in general that might not necessarily be related to movie spec. You know, keep in mind, comic books don't get hot and don't get valuable just because of movie spec. Obviously, that's big in this day and age, especially for Marvel books. So, because Sean specifically asked about movie hype, let's discuss those books first and foremost. All right. The first thing, and I always talk about this, but the first thing you want to take into consideration is this. When you're buying books, you want to be ahead of the curve, right? You want to get your hands on books for a cheap price before there's even movie speculation out, right? I'll use one example, White Vision. All right. Spoilers for anybody that has not watched WandaVision, you might want to mute this now. So, West Coast Avengers number 45. That book went from literally like a $5 to $10 book to almost a $200 book literally overnight because we got to see White Vision and WandaVision. You could have bought that book literally a month ago and only paid $10. You could have bought it a couple years ago, probably, for $2, maybe $3, or you may have even been able to find it in the dollar bin. So before you ask yourself, when should you sell? You first have to ask yourself, when should you buy? If you are in the market to sell books and to make profit, you want to be on top of the speculator market. You want to be before there's any type of even hint. All right. So you, for example, looking at Marvel related MCU books, you got to look at the movies that are already out and the paths that they're going and say, well, we know these characters are there. We know this is happening. What can I assume is going to happen next, right? And then you put the pieces together. So, for example, one thing that I've been doing, I know that the MCU is going more cosmic, okay? So, who do you look at that might show up next? Nova. That's a good example. So, you get your hands on Nova's first appearance, Nova number 1. Quasar. Quasar's another one where you can get his first appearance. He has two first appearances. First appearance of Marvel Boy, Marvel Man, and then first appearance where he takes the name of Quasar. Get those for decently cheap price. Once we get any type of movie announcement, that's when we know these books are going to start increasing in value. So, Sean brought up movie announcement, trailer release, movie release. You should buy before any of those happen. And if you have the books and then there's a movie announcement, all right, that's that first step in those books getting hot. Now, I recommend, and again, don't take my words at face value. This is just my humble advice and opinion. If I was to sell a book due to movie speculation. I would not sell at movie announcement, and I would not sell at trailer release for the most part. For the most part, all right? Because each one of those things is a stepping stone that's going to most likely, more often than not, continue to increase the value of that book. We know that as soon as the movie drops, right, and that character is shown on the TV screen, boom, that isn't necessarily going to be your ceiling, but can be a pinnacle point up until then, right? Look at White Vision. We didn't know White Vision was coming, though, and boom, here he is. I think that's why we saw such a big increase overnight in that book. Nope, we didn't get a trailer for White Vision. We didn't know anything about, we didn't have a casting for White Vision. Like, you know, none of that happened. So similar to like Moon Knight. Moon Knight's a good example to where we got an announcement of a TV show, all right? Book starts getting hot. We get casting. Book starts getting hotter. Okay, it's going to start, the books are going to start getting hotter once we get a trailer. When we get a trailer, boom, and then the show drops. Now, the flip side of this is you're always going to take a gamble. Because if something releases, a movie or a TV show, and the book has been getting hot because of the announcement and the trailer and so forth, and the movie bombs or the movie disappoints, that can essentially affect the value of that book moving forward and the trajectory of that value. Everything's a gamble. Now, the MCU and Marvel Studios has a good track record to where we're not really seeing that. You don't see anything really bomb to where it's going to negatively impact the value of a spec book. So I think to answer this question, a very key point in time to sell would be either right before the movie drops or right when the movie drops. But there's so many other variables that you need to take into consideration before you just say, oh, this is the right time to sell a book. I'm going to tell you guys one thing, and this goes beyond movie spec now. Now we're just going to talk about comic books in general. Anything that happens in the future is an unknown. All right? That's a fact. Nobody knows. And that's for any market. That's for the stock market. It's for anything. All right? And the other thing is every book is its own entity. And every book is going to garner its own individual situation and outcome. So as much as you could sit here and say, oh, well, it's black and white, this is when you should buy and sell, it's not that black and white, and it's never going to be. You're always going to take a risk. So a few things that you have to ask yourself, too, about this certain book. Is it a modern book? Is it a Bronze Age book? Is it a Silver Age book? Okay. So, for example, if it's a character like Nova, all right, Nova is a book that, in my humble opinion, because it's a Bronze Age book, Nova #1, first appearance of Richard Rider, that book has precedent. Okay, so you ask, what does that mean? A book having precedent means either the book itself or other variables that relate and coincide to the book. These are precedents for that book. It's a Bronze Age book. Bronze Age book have precedence of having long-term sustainability on a market. All right. Even more so Silver Age books. If you want to talk about, say, the first appearance of him in Thor 165. Silver Age book that has precedent because regardless of movie hype, these books have precedent of increasing in value over time long-term. So when you take a book like that and say, when should you sell? That kind of changes the narrative, even if it's surrounding movie spec, right? Because look, Nova or Adam Warlock could be introduced, and once we get an announcement or a trailer or a casting, and then the movie release, you might see the values of those books doing this, right? But who's to say that once that movie releases that it's capped off, it's hit the ceiling? Nobody, especially if it's a Silver Age or Bronze Age book. Because guess what can happen? It can continue to increase in value over time. Another thing that you have to take into consideration is ebb and flow. All right? Books, just like any market, stocks, anything, doesn't just do this. It doesn't just do this. It does this. All right? It does that. Ebb and flow. So, for example, say we saw a teaser of Adam Warlock. Say we get an announcement of Adam Warlock in Guardians 3, and then we know he's going to come, and we see this book doing this, and then we get Guardians 3, right? So say right now, Thor 165 has a fair market value that's sitting right here. All right, and say it continues to increase once we get a preview and then we get the movie drop. And the movie, then it's right here, right? So say the movie comes out and it's right here, and then say the movie does well and now it's, out of theaters or whatnot, and maybe the value of that book goes down like this. Should you sell now? Should you sell now? Or are you feeling like, oh, I missed out, I should have sold it when it was right there just because it dropped? Well, it's not where it's at right now, so you're still good, right? If you were to sell it here, you would still make a profit. But hey, look, maybe it goes up again, but then maybe it drops again. Oh man, that was a big drop, but it's still not right here. But then in 5 years from now, it's back up here. You guys can see that way up here, and it's even higher than it was at when the movie dropped. So you got to ask yourself, why are you selling your book? Are you looking for a short-term flip, or are you willing to hold on to something for that long-term gain? All right, let's look at modern books. Modern books don't have as much precedent behind them. It's more of an uncharted market because they're so new. Ultimate Fallout 4. I believe that book has not hit its ceiling, and I believe it's here to stay. But it's more of a risky investment because there's not a lot of precedent before it. I mean, the book's only 10 years old, and it's one of those that's in a league of its own of modern books to shoot up to that value so quickly, right? So there's really no answer because everything is a guessing game. You got to play the market. You got to educate yourself. There are other books. I'm going to talk about White Vision. That it's really a seller's market with no precedent to where, yes, I think if you have a West Coast Avengers 45 right now, I think personally, and if you're only in it because you want to make money, I believe right now is the time to sell. I do. Now, I don't know what's going to happen 5-10 years down the line for that book, which is, a Copper Age book. Some would call it modern, but I would call it Copper Age. We don't know, but I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't pay over $40 for that book, and it's selling for anywhere from $150 close to $200 right now. That's a book that if I bought for $40 or less, especially $10 or $5 or $3, especially if I had more than one copy, I'd be selling right now. All right. And maybe if I had multiple, I'd sell maybe one or two and hold on to one or two as well. I believe that book is definitely going to drop hard. Is it ever going to be what it was at before? I don't think it's ever going to be a $10 book anymore. I don't. But I think it's going to take a hard drop. But hey, that's not to say we have White Vision in the MCU now, and we don't know how the story's going to play out. So even though I do feel it's going to cool off, I do believe that there's going to be a long-term incremental increase over time. But again, ask yourself the question, are you willing to sit on these for that long-term return on investment, or do you want to maximize profits right now and get money in your pocket right now? And that's the other thing you need to ask yourself. Why are you selling? Are you selling because you're out to get this hot key? You want to get a grail that you have wanted since you were a kid or for many years, and you're speculating on these books that you could get for an affordable price, and once there's movie spec behind them, you can flip them, and then you're going to take that money and sell it. Well, guess what? If you sit on those books, and even if those books continue to increase in value, guess what's also going to happen? That grail that you're trying to that you're trying to save money up for, that book's going to continue to increase in value over time. So it might be best to flip and sell right now to then get a fair market value on that ASM 129 or that Hulk 181, because we know in 5 to 10 years from now, those books are almost guaranteed to continue to increase in value. You see what I'm saying here? Every situation is unique to its own. All right. But this is my kind of, to sum this up, this is what I would encourage you to do if you're selling. If you're selling books, you got to study the market. You absolutely have to study the market. If people are selling books and they don't understand the bare minimum of economics and finance, I'm not going to call you names or say you're this or you're that, but you're probably going to sell yourself short quite often. All right. Understand the market. Watch what the market's doing. Understand precedent. Understand each book. Understand the variables that pertain to each book. Is it a golden age, silver age, bronze age, copper age, modern book? Is it Marvel or DC? Is it increasing in value? Am I speculating on it because of movie hype or because of something that's going on in the comic books like Knoll? Like a Knoll first appearance, Venom #3. You got to consider all those things and what it means. And you got to think this as well. Do I want to be able to make a profit for the short term because I don't want to hold on to it long term? Then you got to weigh the pros and cons and say, I'm willing to say, maybe this book will increase more and more later on, years down the line, but I want to take my profits and my return and put them in my pocket right now. That's the risk that you're having to be willing to take. So those are my tips. And I really hope that, Sean, this answered your question. And I hope everyone else watching could take this in and learn a little something. Like I said, don't treat a comic book like it's just a comic book. Every comic book is different. All right. And you have to know what you got. You got to do your research. And sometimes you do have to have patience. But look, sometimes if you wait too long, you miss that window of opportunity. But just educate yourself, have patience, no regrets. I always talk about that as well. If you're selling, you can't have regrets. But just be educated of what you're doing. And look, it's a guessing game. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Sometimes you're going to have to be willing to accept the risk and accept the loss in order to come away and feel excited about when you do win. So there it is, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm not selling any books in the near future. I don't think so. Hey, that might change at any point in time. But for right now, I'm all about hanging on to my books. But to everyone out there selling, more power to you. It's a great seller's market right now. So good luck to everyone that is putting books on the secondary market. All right, everyone. Thank you guys so much for watching. And again, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Big shout out to all my Patreon supporters via patreon.com. Sean, thank you for submitting this question and suggestion. Really have fun talking about this today. So for everyone watching, be well, and until next time.